Two Ukrainian MiG-29s flying at an altitude of 100 meters enter hostile territory. Ahead lies a Russian command post protected by S-400 and Tor systems. In the air, 40 kilometers away, Su-30 fighters are ready to intercept. On the ground, radars are tracking every move. The mission? Destroy the heart of the enemy drone operation targeting civilian infrastructure. The challenge? Launch their AASM Hammer missiles at the Russian command base without being taken down. The target wasn't just another random military installation. It was a Russian UAV command center, the true brain behind dozens of attacks on Ukrainian cities. From there, operators controlled swarms of Orlan 10 and Shahed 136 drones responsible for turning entire neighborhoods into fire zones. Footage of Russian drones striking residential buildings, power stations, and fuel depots shows the direct impact of these operations. Every attack was launched based on coordinates processed inside this facility, where consoles, antennas, and servers kept electronic warfare running day and night. Neutralizing this structure meant far more than destroying computers. It was about breaking the chain of command behind attacks that left millions of people in the dark and under constant threat. As long as it remained operational, every Ukrainian city was just minutes away from becoming a target. That's why the mission was so critical. Eliminating the drone nest meant saving lives and giving the skies over Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Odessa a chance to breathe. For this task, ordinary weapons wouldn't be enough. The MiG-29s were armed with one of the deadliest systems ever adapted in the conflict, the AASM Hammer-guided bombs. Unlike a standard bomb, the Hammer is a French precision kit that transforms a conventional bomb body into a smart weapon. It adds retractable wings, navigation systems, and even a rocket booster that extends its range to over 60 kilometers when launched from altitude. The pilot doesn't need to fly directly over the target. The weapon can be released from kilometers away, staying clear of the most lethal defensive zones. Against fixed targets like the command post, the Hammer offered meter-level precision, capable of piercing concrete and obliterating entire rooms in a single strike. And this choice was no accident. It was the only chance to hit the heart of the Russian operation without turning the mission into a suicide run. Inside the cockpit, the view was limited. A low horizon, rolling hills flashing by in a frantic rhythm, and the digital altimeter showing just over 120 meters. At this altitude, any mistake could be fatal. But it was also the only way to stay unseen. The tactic is called terrain masking, using the land itself as a shield against enemy radars. The plan required the MiG-29s to stay low, hugging the contours of Sumy Oblast, a region of rolling fields and narrow valleys. Every river bend, every ridge had been mapped out through months of reconnaissance. Satellites, drones, and even intercepted signals had helped chart the gaps in the Russian radar network. On the HUD, the pilot followed a digital line projecting an exact route. Any deviation could expose them to a direct radar lock. But there was no alternative. Staying low meant survival. Above 500 meters, the sky became an open hunting ground for Russian radars. Below 100 meters, turbulence from the treetops and the razor-thin margin for error became deadly. The narrow band between 100 and 200 meters was the knife edge. Hundreds of kilometers away in Kursk, an S-400 Triumph battery activated its 92 N6E gravestone radar. The control room screen lit up with a faint, almost imperceptible return. There was no firing solution yet, but it was enough of an anomaly to raise suspicion. That initial detection triggered automatic protocols. The system software relayed the data to the sector command center, which immediately passed the information to patrolling fighters and other linked radars. What had been electronic silence now turned into an active hunt. The problem was that Russia didn't rely on a single system. Its air defense doctrine stacked overlapping layers of sensors and missiles, forming a true kill corridor. The S-400 had long-range coverage. The Buck M3 dominated medium range, and the mobile, lethal Tor M2 hunted anything daring to fly too low. In practice, this meant the Ukrainian MiG-29s were entering an electronic labyrinth where each radar acted like a spotlight ready to guide a missile. The pilot knew that from this moment on, every passing second in the air was another second dozens of Russian operators were working to turn that faint anomaly into a fixed target. The alert triggered by the S-400 now had every Buk and Tor radar scanning their sectors at maximum precision. Another silent actor was already in position over the battlefield, a Ukrainian Bayraktar TB2. Far more than just a surveillance drone, it played a dual role. For hours, it orbited at 18,000 feet, streaming real-time images of the target directly to the Ukrainian cockpits. But that wasn't its most important function. The TB2 was there to be seen, a calculated decoy designed to provoke the Russian systems. The Russians knew the TB2 well. Since the early months of the war, it had become a symbol of Ukrainian resistance. But over time, Russia adapted, tightening its defenses and shooting down dozens of them. Now, every TB2 sent to the front carried an almost certain death sentence. Still, its loss was acceptable if it forced the enemy to reveal its radars. And that's exactly what happened. Just a few kilometers ahead, a Pantsir S-1 battery activated its search radar. The operator believed he was about to shoot down yet another drone. But the moment he pulled the electronic trigger, he broadcasted his position across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. Almost instantly, Ukrainian electronic warfare antennas intercepted the signal. The Pantsir's coordinates were mapped and transmitted to the MiG-29 fighters. Every time a Russian radar lit up to track the TB2, the Ukrainians gained another piece of the puzzle, tracing safer routes through the deadly maze of defenses. This was the essence of the tactic, using the TB2 as a sacrificial pawn on the chessboard while the fighters advanced. Meanwhile, the initial alert from the S-400 hadn't been forgotten. In parallel, a Russian acoustic detection system, a Cold War-era technology, picked up the distant roar of Ukrainian jets. Combined, the data painted a clear vector. Something was approaching at low altitude from the southwest. That information reached the hands of a Su-30 fighter patrolling the area at 5,000 meters. The Russian fighter was a formidable adversary. Equipped with the Bars-R radar, a powerful scanning system capable of distinguishing low-flying targets against the backdrop of the terrain, the Su-30 posed a single greatest aerial threat to the MiG-29s. Within seconds, they're trapped in the worst possible scenario. Missiles coming from every direction. A hidden Tor M2 system, concealed in a tree line, launches two 9Me-338 missiles capable of engaging targets in under 8 seconds. Almost simultaneously, the radar warning receiver lights up with the signature of a Buk M3, firing its medium-range missiles. From above, the Russian Su-30 closes the final distance, releasing its R-77 long-range air-to-air missiles. On the HUD, threat symbols flash in red. The pilot yanks the stick violently, pulling into a high G turn as the aircraft dives toward the ground. At the same time, the countermeasure dispenser begins spitting out chaff and flares in rapid succession. Each burst of chaff, ultra-thin metallic fibers, creates a cloud that confuses enemy radars, tricking the missiles into thinking there are multiple targets in the air. The flares, meanwhile, mimic the engine heat signature, diverting infrared-guided missiles. On the pilot's display, white trails of incoming missiles crisscross the sky in opposite directions. One detonates prematurely, fooled by the chaff. Another dives straight toward a flare, exploding just meters behind the MiG. The jet shakes violently from the shockwave, but stays airborne. Meanwhile, the Su-30 keeps up the chase. Its R-77 missiles scream in at supersonic speed. It's time for a desperate maneuver. The pilot prepares the Cobra, an iconic Soviet-era move now turned against them. The MiG-29 pitches up nearly vertical, nose pointing straight at the sky. Airspeed drops sharply, and for a brief instant, the jet seems to freeze mid-air. The R-77, programmed to predict fast-moving trajectories, overshoots the target and streaks past, detonating harmlessly ahead. But the maneuver isn't over. The pilot uses the rising sun to his advantage, positioning the blinding light directly behind his fuselage. The infrared seeker of the second R-77, hunting for heat, is overwhelmed by the glare and loses its lock, veering off into nothingness. Even so, victory comes at a price. Fragments from the earlier detonation strike the tail of one of the MiG-29s. Warning alarms scream about structural damage, and the panel shows a partial loss of pressure in the hydraulic system. Still, the engines keep running. The fighter struggles to maneuver, but it's alive after minutes of pure survival.